coming on this evening's, Sunday evening feast program. Just, 2 days before 1st January, New Year's. So generally at this time of year, only the more serious persons are coming to our programs because there's so many other activities beckoning. Drinking aquavit, what is it? Aquavit, you say? Vodka. Getting drunk, falling on your face. Enjoying life, in other words. But in Krishna consciousness, there's another kind of enjoyment, transcendental enjoyment. The enjoyment of dedicating ourselves to the service of Krishna. Now, when one surrenders oneself to the service of Krishna, that does not mean that there are no more problems or obstacles. Just like some of you coming here tonight as guests, you may also have your own personal obstacles that you have to overcome to come here. Maybe you have to also leave some family gathering or something like that. They wanted to celebrate. This is the celebration season. So everyone who is trying to dedicate themselves to Krishna has obstacles. But the glory, that which makes the devotee glorious, and that which makes the process of devotional service glorious, and that which also shows the glory of Krishna's mercy, is when we overcome these obstacles. Now for us in this material world, the greatest obstacle is that we are situated within this material body. And for so long we have identified with this body that this is me. But that's a very unfortunate identification, because this body is of course temporary. It is subject to so many miseries. If one thinks I am the body, then he is actually condemning himself to suffer. Not only one time, not only in this one life, but by identifying with the body, we condemn ourselves in the future to take more bodies, more and more. So this bodily conception is actually the greatest obstacle that we are faced with now in our complete and total dedication and surrender to Sri Krishna. But if we are determined, and someone may ask, well, where does this determination come from? How can I become determined to, under all circumstances, serve Krishna, even though I'm getting the call of Maya? Maya calls us in different ways, through our senses, through our minds, through our intellect, calls us to serve illusion. So how will I get this determination to withstand the call of Maya? So actually that can only be answered by just speaking on the very essence of what we mean by bhakti or devotion. There must be love of Krishna. When one actually, just as we see in the material world, there's no real love in the material world. These are different forms of lust. But anyway, it's a kind of reflection of love. So even when we see this temporary lust, say between two people, they love each other, or someone says he loves his country, loves his flag, then they make so many sacrifices for that. Of course, it comes to no use in the end. But the principle is there, love, attachment. So this is what we must do. Develop love and attachment for Sri Krishna. Now, just like we see, as we were making the bhajan and seeing this beautiful picture of the eternal teenagers, Sri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. So here we see the highest expression of love of God, love of Krishna, that which is shared between the masculine and feminine aspect of the Absolute Truth, as personified by Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna. Now they are eternal lovers, eternally sharing in pastimes of love in the transcendental realm of Goloka. But even there are obstacles. These obstacles are actually creations of Krishna himself to make the love that they're sharing and that all the devotees are sharing in Goloka, to make that love deeper, more profound, more meaningful, and more glorious. As I explained, what is that glory? That we overcome the obstacles. So we should never think that Krishna consciousness, when I become Krishna conscious, when that day comes when I cross over the obstacle of this body and this mind, this material identity, and come to the transcendental stage, we should never think that then it's going to be something like nirvana. You know, this is a very common conception of what is spiritual life. This term nirvana means the cessation of all anxieties. The word vana means forest. So in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a very elaborate description or comparison of this material existence to a dark and frightening forest. And so many examples are there to show how life here in the material world is very dangerous for us, very disturbing. So naturally people who recognize this danger and disturbance, they want to get out of that dark forest. So coming out is called nirvana. So then a popular conception is when you attain this nirvana, then you're just kind of floating like a bubble. You see, with a bubble with one of these smiling faces. You see these little round circles, they sometimes stick on the walls. It just has a big smile, with 2 eyes and this big smile. So they think you become like a bubble with a smile. Just floating and everything's all right. But no. Actually, such a conception is quite opposed to Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness means it's not just smiling and floating, but it's becoming dedicated, fixed in service to Krishna. And Krishna is always testing that, even in the spiritual world. And the whole glory of the devotees, devotional service, and Krishna's mercy is that these obstructions, they're always overcome. So this is a good lesson for us. We have our own obstructions, but we can overcome them, certainly. If we follow in the footsteps of the great eternal devotees of Sri Krishna. Just like here we see Srimati Radharani. She looks so happy. Her face is brightly smiling as she's leaning on Krishna's shoulder. But sometimes she's obstructed from being with Krishna. One time, her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law in Golok, although this is the eternal transcendental world, still the devotees assume different roles like that to give Krishna pleasure. Krishna has his family and his friends, and they all have these relationships as we see them here, like father, mother, sister, brother, so on. But all these relationships are simply meant for one thing, to give pleasure to Krishna. So Radharani, she is apparently married, although she's Krishna's eternal consort. She has an apparent marriage to another man named Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu's mother, of course Radharani's mother-in-law, her name is Jatila. And Abhimanyu's sister becomes Radharani's sister-in-law. Her name is Kutila. So one day Jatila and Kutila were conversing at home. And they were talking about, or Jatila was complaining about, why is it every morning Radharani goes to the house of Nanda Maharaj to cook breakfast for Krishna? After all, she's married to my son. She should be cooking breakfast for him. What business does she have to go to another man's house and cook breakfast for him. This is very strange. Then Kutila answered, well, but this is simply because Yashoda, who is Krishna's mother, is so much attached to Krishna. She knows that Srimati Radharani has received benediction from a great yogi named Durvas. So Durvas tasted Radharani's cooking when he visited Vrindavan. And he was so thrilled, he was so pleased that he blessed Srimati Radharani that whoever tastes this cooking will never suffer disease, will always be in the best of health. So Yashoda knows this, and she's only thinking of Krishna's health. She's every day making so many arrangements that Krishna will be healthy and happy. So one thing she does is she makes sure that Radharani cooks for Krishna's breakfast. So then Jatila answered, anyway, what does Durvas know about household affairs? He's a sadhu yogi. He goes here and there, gives benediction. He doesn't think about the result. He doesn't think that it can break a home, break a happy marriage. So I don't care. Let Durvas benedict as he likes, but my daughter-in-law is not going today or any other day to Krishna's house to cook. This is my final decision. So then Radha that morning, she was prevented from going. So she became so unhappy. She went in her room and she just threw herself on her bed and was laying there. And her whole body became hot from separation from Krishna. So now this caused great distress. Actually, when it was known at Krishna's house that Radharani is not coming this morning, everyone became very unhappy, and the news spread throughout all Vrindavan. And the whole, all the devotees means the cowherd men, cowherd women, the boys, the girls, but not only that, the cows, the peacocks, and the birds, and the deer, and the trees, and the flowers. They're all devotees of Krishna, all eternally conscious entities. They also became most unhappy. And so it seemed like the whole land of Vrindavan was drying up because everybody was sharing in this intense anxiety of Radharani for Krishna. So she was burning up in the fire of separation, and so was everyone else, sharing in her grief. Finally, Dhanishta, who is the servant girl of Yashoda, Krishna's mother, Dhanishta came running to Radharani at her house and came in her room and said, Radha, please, you must cook something at least here, at least in your own house. Just make some sweets, I'll take them to Krishna. I don't know what's going to happen. This whole place is going to explode if Krishna doesn't eat something cooked by you. So then Radha jumped up, she was very happy, and she went into her kitchen and she began to cook. And she experienced standing over that stove, because it is a wood stove. So wood stove makes nice flame and heat. So she was standing over that hot stove, and she experienced the heat from the flame as being very cooling, because she was so hot from not being with Krishna. So it was like the cooling rays of the moon coming out of the stove upon her. So she felt very relieved, and she made 4 kinds of sweets, and Dhanishta took the sweets to Krishna. So there was a general feeling throughout Vrindavan that this is intolerable. This prohibition that Radharani cannot go to Krishna. So there was a kind of transcendental plot that was made. And the plot went into motion a little later, when Vishaka, who was one of Radharani's very dear friends, she came running up to Jatila, and Vishaka was crying, and she was pulling her own hair, and she was in great grief and anxiety. And so Jatila was looking, what's wrong with you? And Vishaka said, oh, You just prepare yourself for a great shock. Your beloved daughter-in-law Radharani has just been bitten by a snake. And Jatila was so astonished. She ran into Radharani's room and she found Radharani laying on the floor, and her face was white and she was practically unconscious, swooning and trembling. She looked awful. So Jatila called Kutila. They both came. They were trying to revive Radharani, but nothing was working. So Jatila said to Kutila, "You go bring the snake doctor." And then Radharani, she came a little bit out of her unconscious state, and she said, "Don't bring any snake doctor here. If he touches my body, I will die." Because Radharani is so chaste, she won't even let a doctor touch her. Only Krishna can touch her. So then Jatila said, "Okay, forget about the snake doctor. We have to do something else. We have to find. Let's find some lady, some woman who knows how to cure snake bite, because only a woman can touch Radharani." So then they ran to Purnamasi. Purnamasi is the grand old lady of Vrindavan village who knows many things. So they approached Purnamasi. Purnamasi, you can just imagine, they were beside themselves with grief, so desperate. Radharani is dying. So they came to Purnamasi, please come with us to our house. You must cure Radharani of snake bite. Purnamasi, she said, "I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this. I don't know how to cure snake bite." So they were terrified. They were crying big tears. What to do? And then Purnamasi said, "You should go to Gargi." Gargi is the daughter of Garga Muni, who's the priest in Vrindavan. She's a Brahmana girl, so she knows many things. So maybe she will know how to cure snake bite. So they ran to the house of Garga Muni, and they called Gargi. Gargi came out, and they explained everything to her, and she also said, "Well, I'm sorry, I know many things, but this is one thing I never learned, how to cure snake bite." So then they were ready to die themselves. They were so crushed. And then Gargi said, "Oh, now don't become too distressed. Actually, my sister-in-law is here, Vidyavali. She has come all the way from Varanasi to visit our home. So she knows these things. So let me get Vidyavali." So then she brought out Vidyavali. Now this Vidyavali was an extremely beautiful young girl, and she was very dark in complexion. She had big lotus eyes. She was actually Krishna, dressed up to look like a young Brahmin girl. So now Jatila and Kutila, they're always showing dislike of Krishna, because they're always suspecting Krishna of being too much interested in Radharani. So they're always trying to protect Radharani from Krishna. They're always thinking of Krishna as a rascal, always insulting him, rebuking him. But now they see Krishna as Vidyavali, and they both fell at Vidyavali's feet. That's her lotus feet. And they were praying, "Please, Vidyavali, you come with us to our home and heal our unfortunate Radharani." And Vidyavali, she put her nose in the air and she looked at Gargi and said, "Who are these women?" Gargi said, "Oh, this is Kutila and Jatila, and they come from this village. They're Vaishya women." "Vaishya women? I'm a Brahmana girl. You expect me to go into the home of common cowherd girls? I'll never do such a thing. I won't break my caste for anything like this. This is nonsense." And then the two cowherd women, they were howling, they were crying, they were taking Vidyavali's feet and putting them on their heads. "Please, don't talk this way. Our poor Radharani is dying, you must help." And then Gargi, she said, "Vidyavali, don't be so proud. You're only talking like this because you come from Varanasi, that's the city of Shiva. You worship that Shiva, therefore you become so puffed up. And you know these ladies are Vaishnavas, so you are arrogant to them. Don't be like this." And then Vidyavali said, "Oh, what are you saying? All right, I'll go with them. But but I have heard about your village, Vrindavan. I've heard about this place. And I've heard about one rascal. There's one rascal young man here named Krishna. And he hides on the forest path. And when he sees young girls, he comes out and molests them. And I'll have you know that I come from the most aristocratic Brahmin family. I am a very pure, chaste woman. And if such a rascal as this will even look at me, then I will give up my body. I will not live another second. So then Gargi said, all right, I'll protect you. We'll make sure that Krishna is not there. We'll walk ahead and look on each side of the path and chase him away. So then Vidyavali, she very proudly, arrogantly went behind these ladies. And they came to the house of Abhimanyu. And they came inside and they saw Radharani in a room, laying on the floor, looking very, very sick. So then Vidyavali held her hand and took her pulse and said, oh, I will need to have betel nut and betel leaf. Now this is a certain kind of mildly intoxicating plant which is chewed in India. It's put inside a leaf with some red katichu, and it's called pan. So when one goes to India, one will unavoidably see people with red mouth and spitting red. It's because they chew pan. So the betel is the main ingredient. So then Jatila ran very quickly and got some betel leaf and nuts and brought it back. And then Vidyavali, she put it in her own mouth and chewed it. And she said, she looked at them and said, this medicine must be administered in a very special way. So she chewed it up. And then she put her lips to the lips of Radharani and transferred it in that way by a kiss. And Radharani was enjoying this very much because she knew exactly who Vidyavali really is. And all of this is going on right in front of Jatila and Kutila. And they're looking and saying, oh, is it working? Maybe you should do it again. Shall we do more? So, but Radharani would not open her eyes. So then Vidyavali said, this medicine, this poison is so powerful. This must come from a very special snake, not an ordinary snake. So I'm going to have to summon this snake here by mantra and have that snake extract the poison from Radharani's body. So that snake will be very dangerous. So you have to go outside the room. You can listen through the door as I do this. So then they left. And then they heard Vidyavali, she was chanting some mysterious sounding mantra. And then they heard the sound of a snake, some hissing sounds. Of course, Krishna is just making all this himself. But they're listening, oh, the snake is coming. And then Vidyavali heard her ask, who are you? And then they heard the snake voice answer, I am the king of snakes. I come from Mount Kailash, the abode of Shiva. And why have you bitten Srimati Radharani? Because I want to cause Jatila the utmost torment. Today I have bitten Radharani, and she will die. And tomorrow I will eat Abhimanyu, Jatila's son, just to cause Jatila pain. Why do you want to cause Jatila pain? Because she has insulted Durvas, who is an expansion of my master Shiva. And she has accused him of being ignorant in his distribution of benedictions. This was a great offense. And moreover, she has insulted Krishna, who is a simple, innocent, pure-hearted, coward boy who never does anything wrong. And she has accused him of having adulterous intentions on Radharani. And this is total nonsense. Then Vidyavali asked, so what will we have to do? to have you extract the poison from Radharani. This Jatila shall never again insult my master Durvas, and never again shall she ever forbid Radharani from cooking for Krishna. So then Vidyavali called to the door, is that all right? And Jatila said, yes, please, anything. So then the snake extracted the poison, or at least that's what they thought. And then Vidyavali called, it's all right. And then when they came in, they saw Radharani sitting up in blooming, youthful health, and she was holding Vidyavali's hand and leaning her head on Vidyavali's shoulder, looking very blissful. And Jatila and Kutila came and they were touching Radharani, smoothing her hair, and are you all right? And Radharani saying, yes, I feel wonderful. And then Jatila said, as soon as you feel strong again, you must immediately go to Krishna's house and cook for him. He's such a nice boy. You should render all kinds of service to him as much as possible. We like him so much. So this is a nice story, which has been told by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And this is just one little drop from the unlimited ocean of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes. So these are the goings-on, the eternal goings-on in the spiritual world. And we see this Leela, a transcendental pastime, it is full of laughter, joking. It is also full of distress and crying. It is full of desire. And there are also obstructions which are overcome in the end. So this is the state of fully bloomed consciousness. In this material world, we're also experiencing emotions of different kinds, and we have our desires, and we have our activities to fulfill our desires, and we also meet with obstructions. But when we're in material consciousness, then we never experience the full bloom or the full ripening of our consciousness to perfection, to ultimate satisfaction. We're always left hankering, unsatisfied. It's something like, we never get the fruit. We never get that which we really want that will make us happy. Our experience here in the material world is something like that game. I don't know if you have a game here in Sweden, but where I come from, in the USA, whenever it's this festive time, where they have parties, they sometimes have a game where they fill a big barrel full of water, a barrel like about this high, and they put apples in the barrel so they float to the top. And then the people they have to keep their hands behind their back, and then they just lean over and they try to bite an apple with their mouth, not taking it with the hand. So of course, by doing this, they can get the taste of apple in the mouth, but generally the apple is slipping away and they're getting a wet face. And then even if they're successful, what do they get? They can chomp and get one mouthful of apple, but then the apple goes away, falls out of their mouth. So in other words, that's like material life. It's a great endeavor, and we may most likely not even nearly accomplish what we would like to accomplish. We just try, struggle, and we have to be satisfied with failure somehow or other. That's what people do. They make mental adjustments so that somehow failure satisfies them. I wanted to become a big doctor, but I could not pass the test at school. So now I'm a newspaper man. Anyway, this is also nice. I don't mind this. Now I drive taxi. But it's okay. And even if someone does attain what they want, what is it? It's a very brief feeling of satisfaction. And then it's gone, and this life is gone. So we never come to the state of fulfillment when our inner consciousness blooms in full fruit. But that is what the process of Krishna consciousness does for us. So it begins in the here and now. We have this body, and as I said, we have this consciousness with its emotions. We should direct them to Krishna. And how to do that is very simple. It begins, of course, with the standard procedure, which we advise everyone to take up. You please chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you please come regularly to this Hare Krishna center, and you take Krishna Prasada, and you come into the temple and see the deities, and chant and kirtan with the devotees, and you hear Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam lecture. And in this way, try to fill the mind. There's a festival in Malaysia called Thaipusam. Actually, it's in India too, but it's in Malaysia where they have really, the Hindus who live in Malaysia have really made this into some very amazing kind of festival. So this festival falls in February, around that time. And there's a temple outside of Kuala Lumpur, Hindu temple. It's up a long, long flight of stairs. So the devotees who are going up to visit the temple, they make austerities, penance, to get the blessing of the deity. The deity is, by the way, Kartikeya, the son of Lord Shiva. Vaishnavas don't do these kind of things, but the Shaivites, they like to perform self-torture. So I was there a couple times, and I've seen how one such austerity that they do is that some men have these big swords, big thick swords with a sharp blade, and they show that it's sharp by cutting up some fruit first. They throw some fruit up in the air and cut it right in half, so you know it's a sharp blade. And then 4 men, or 6 men actually, they have 3 such blades. So they're holding each end, holding the blade, one on each end of the blade. And then there's another man who steps with his bare feet on the edge of the blade. And he puts his full weight, and then he steps on the next blade. And then as he's stepping on the 3rd blade, then those on the last, they go around to the front. And this way he walks on razor edges all the way up to the temple. And I watched it. Because he's gotten the blessing, there are priests at the bottom when this procession starts. They give blessing, they give mantra from Kartikeya. So those who are very devoted to Kartikeya and have observed some vow for 1 month before, they have observed celibacy and not done anything bad, then they become empowered and they can do these things. He was walking on the blade without cutting his feet. So the Upanishads say that to take the spiritual path, it is like a razor's edge, like walking on razor. In other words, if someone is not pure at heart, just like this example, if a person has not observed the vow of Kartikeya beforehand, and just tries to pretend that I'm a great devotee of Kartikeya, if he puts his foot on that sword, he's going to lose some toes immediately. So Krishna consciousness is like that, in this sense, that if we want to be successful, the heart must be pure. We must be sincere. I often give a little explanation of this word in English, sincere, because it's a very sublime word. It's not a word that has a concrete, we can't say this is sincere, You can't point to any physical object and say this is what sincere means. It's a state of mind, a state of consciousness. But we can appreciate what it means by understanding the origin of the word. The word sincere comes from Latin. sinicera, which means without wax. And because in the old days, when they were building up Rome, the Romans were using a marble, which was cut from the hills, the quarries in the hills. And they're building their big, beautiful buildings and temples. So, as you know, Italy is the homeland of the mafia, so there were gangsters. There's always been gangsters there. So sometimes gangsters would take over the quarrying business, the rock cutting business, and they would give the Roman government inferior marble, which had fine crack in it. But they would hide this. They would hide these cracks in the marble by pouring some wax, melted wax into the crack. So when wax hardens, it looks like marble. So the Roman government would take these blocks of marble and use them. They would build their building, and then when the hot sun would come out, the wax would be melted, and then they would suddenly see, oh, the building is covered with cracks. And so they made a rule, the government passed a law, that the blocks of marble must be examined carefully, inspected, and they must be approved as sinicera, without wax. So in other words, it means no cheating. So this word has come into English, sincere. It means without a hidden, tricky motive. Just straightforward, as it is. We say Bhagavad Gita as it is. Another way of saying Bhagavad Gita, sincerely. Sincerely yours, Bhagavad Gita. So, this is required. So sincerely means to practice Krishna consciousness sincerely means we must be striving honestly to develop this attraction, attachment, devotion to Krishna. Of course, we can only begin small. We can only do this step by step. Bhagavad Gita says, Shanai, Shanai, step by step. This is how one becomes successful. But we should be trying to make progress, trying to increase, trying to do more. In this way we bind our hearts more and more to Krishna. And when there is obstruction, as there certainly will be, Maya, that's her business to test us. But if we are sincere, if we are serious about binding our hearts to Krishna, then by Krishna's grace we will overcome all obstacles and be successful. Attain the success that this human form of life is meant to give us. So Hare Krishna, thank you very much. I am a little rushed, I have to go back